Hands
His ankle there,
nice
big
nice
left
kick. Here comes Jordan
come back with those hands again.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Episode 232, I'm pretty sure, of Combat Chat Podcast. Coming to you live from beautiful Redfern, New South Wales. Those of you who are observant will notice it is just me on hosting duties today because we had a very special guest lined up. So we couldn't wait around to get him on. Joining on the other side of the line this afternoon is a veteran of the Combat Chat Podcast, a repeat guest. I think it might be his third time with us. It's at the very least the second. Promoter of legendary Australian Muay Thai outfit, Rebellion Muay Thai, as part of course, Outliers Promotions, which also houses BOA, the BOA Invitational for the Jiu-Jitsu fans. Please welcome Mr. Nadji. How are you this afternoon, sir?
I'm great. You forgot to say co-host of the ill-fated Muay Thai Hour.
I don't want to give any shine to another podcast on my podcast. Very similar to a conversation we're having off air, actually. I tried to pretend none of the other shows.
Yeah.
I do pop up on all of them, though. I've done a guest on the Muay Thai Hour and the Ring Lovers podcast.
Yeah. Thanks to Kieran the Death Touch for killing the Muay Thai Hour.
He's too busy jet setting around. Doesn't have time to get in front of the Zoom anymore.
He just gets back enough to stand in the corner of the fighters, shake some hands, kiss some babies, and get out of there. So it's nice.
Anyway, moving on. How are things down in beautiful Melbourne, Si?
Things are great. It's nice, chilly weekend. 3 weeks post after you've had a baby, post whatever it is after Rebellion. A couple of days out before heading up to sunny Bangkok to go to RWS and Fairtex and such. And 8 weeks out till the 8th man. So yeah, things are good. And 16 hours before Muay Thai Victoria, the June edition.
Yeah, so a few points of discussion that I'm keen to get stuck into just off of your little list there. First of all, though, I suppose, what is bringing you to Bangkok? You're just going there to watch some Muay Thai. You've got some business to do over there.
Yeah, it's well overdue. I think most people who don't know me too personally think that because of the Muay Thai and the roots Muay Thai thing, I'm like this guy who lives permanently in Thailand and smokes a lot of weed. I do neither of those. So
no judgment here anyway.
No judgment here anyway. I haven't been back since 2017, which was the last time I went there. It's well overdue. So essentially, it's a 5-day quick whiz bang business trip. Go meet up with my amazing sponsors, Fairtex. Go visit my great friend Timo. Catch the big One Championship card, the big IWS card. A couple of other gyms and stuff that I've got to catch up with, and see my old mate Pippa Jockey Gym, and get
awesome.
back over.
Yeah, that's cool. I actually am going to be in Victoria next week. So when we were discussing this podcast, I thought this would be cool. I'm going to do a live one, but you've taken off on me. Yeah,
you've picked the 1%, less than 1% of my life in Melbourne, and I'm not going to be here. So yeah, no, it's poor timing. You should have got in touch earlier.
I know.
What are you doing in Melbourne that week?
I am going to go visit my friends at Bones. I'm going to go down to Torquay.
Oh, nice. Lovely.
Yeah, I like it down there. But you mentioned, you're going to pop in and do a few visits while you're in Bangkok. So I'm interested to talk about. So we have caught up a couple of times, and there's a few things that I think will be interesting to a lot of our listeners. A lot of our listeners are diehards, and they would have heard you on the last episode. The last time we chatted to you, we did have a little bit of a chat about kind of the state of Australian Muay Thai. It wasn't really the most, what would you say? Wasn't the most enthusiastic take about how things were. So I'm keen to get into that from a few places, but just to talk about Rebellion from just a growth standpoint, you're mentioning a few of the people that you're going to go over to Bangkok to meet. What's it like for you as someone who started Rebellion Muay Thai from Victoria to give, you know, a home to authentic Muay Thai, to now have the kind of partnerships that you do? Like you mentioned, your sponsor Fairtex, you know, provide like some, you know, brilliantly represented across the show. You also had a contingent of Venom training camp in Pattaya on the last show. Yeah, what's it been like to see Rebellion kind of grow to this place where some of the major players in Thai boxing globally are kind of coming on as partners to you, or to support the show and just be involved? What does that feel like?
It's really amazing, man. Like, I was, I don't know what came up that my kids wanted to see our YouTube channel on TV because my son's obsessed with being a YouTuber. And one of the first videos that came up was when Sidichai fought on, I think, Rebellion 7 or 8.
Against Kim?
And I was like, yeah, that was meant to be against Toby Smith, and that fell through. And then Kim Johnson, second time saving my ass within 8 shows, jumped on. And we've had all these fighters over time, and you know, you have conversations with certain fighters and teams, and you know, like even in the last couple of days, getting contact by some people that realized I was going over there and wanted to meet up. And I was like, man, like I don't. People used to call me Mr. Muay Thai, which I found ridiculous because I don't have a Muay Thai gym. I have a boxing gym. I just really like Muay Thai, and to be in this position, like fanboying at half the time, has been really cool. But how like we've as I think a community in Victoria especially have kind of like banded together to grow Muay Thai has been really amazing, man. Like I remember like 2003, 2004, I was training with Laos. I was going to do like a bare knuckle karate fight. I'd just come off my like wrestling career, and we had a kid at the gym, and it was so frustrating because we couldn't get him a full Thai rules Muay Thai fight. No one wanted to fight with elbows. And then I look at it now and go, man, like tomorrow at Muay Thai Victoria, we're going to have 20 full Thai rules fights for amateurs. Then we have Roots and Rebellion, and we've got the international thing. So it's pretty cool, man. Like it's really cool. Like I mean, next week getting to hopefully meet Mr. Wong from Fairtex. That's like,
cool.
I know he's not a fighter or anything, but that's like, man, like that's ridiculous. Like I look up to that dude so much as far as what he's done. So yeah, it's really cool, man. Really cool.
You touched on something that I was actually speaking about this on our last episode. You talking about kind of watching the way the Victorian community has kind of come together to build Muay Thai, and we'll go into a little bit of detail about the last show because I thought it was sick. I thought it was one of your best yet. And I guess, do you feel there has been a shift in the way that, like you mentioned a couple of shows from a few years ago, we'd pull in like a really big name, like a Sidichai or someone like that, to kind of prop up your main event or whichever fight that is, where it feels like now some of the biggest kind of rebellion moments come in the form of these local fights, like Connor and JP the other week. Like in those walkouts, that was absolutely unreal. Like the way that the crowd was going nuts. And every time Joanne fights, like, is that something that you feel has kind of shifted in the last few years? The way that the crowd support the fighters, is what's that been like to witness? And yeah, how do you feel that that's moving?
I think it's like it's more the depth as opposed to the width. I think it's like people who like Rebellion, who are part of the Muay Thai community, they've become more passionate.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like sometimes we get cards together and go like, oh, there isn't too many like local favorites on it, or like as a promoter you go, oh, there isn't that many local ticket sellers, right?
Yeah.
But then we still get really, really good numbers.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a reflection that it's got a following and people understand it and people want to come and watch it, not just because they want to come and watch this one person. And I think that's the part that I enjoy the most. And, you know, forever my plan is to bring guys that we don't get to see locally here onto the show. and like having Summerbed and Siddhichai and guys like that, Yodkinpun, those dudes over the years, it's like I want people to be able to experience that here. Like, I don't want it to just be a local show and pretend to be something else, or it's like a Thai show, but it's all the guys that are holding pads in Melbourne anyway.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I want to get that. That's got to be the icing and the shine on the show. But getting that depth of supporters that understand the sport, like people aren't coming and complaining that there's a white crew or complaining because there's clinching. Like, people get it. Like, you know what? One of my favorite recently was when Carter Lawrence fought Darren Chen on my show. That ended up being a draw. When the guys were clinching up and just going knee for knee, the atmosphere at the pavilion was mental, right? Like,
Yeah, that was a cool
when
fight.
you get like, yeah, like, like a couple of times when like these ice people, or when Tyson knocked out Tom, there was that holy fuck moment. But now the things come where people actually are, like, we've got a room full of people that just hear the knees and they're just roaring, or when someone's throwing really nice kicks, they appreciate it. And I think that's the most, like, truly special part for me. Like, we've got an army of people that actually appreciate Muay Thai. Like, I'm not, extra people is fun, but like, I'm not interested in getting the people who go, I don't want to hear the white crew, and I don't want to see this, and it just, the classic UFC just bleed thing on their t-shirts. Like, cool, there's other things you can do for that. Go watch BKFC or whatever else you want. Like, we're getting like Muay Thai people. I think that's the coolest thing for me.
Yeah, and in kind of kicking the show off, did you envision because we talk a lot about Rebellion and the Muay Vic to Roots to Rebellion kind of pathway as like, the gold standard in developing talent. Is that what you saw yourself doing with Rebellion from the outset, or is this just over time it's been a snowball?
No, I think it really, like, initially I just thought I'd do a show where it would be regular fights in a basketball stadium or whatever, but I think it was like Rebellion 3 or 4 where it was like, we can actually put many more fighters on this, and we can put many more like local developing fighters on. I think that's when I was like, okay, we need a development series for that. And I think about a year ago at one of the shows, John from JPS Coatings was standing there, and I said, do you remember me sending you a message about 8-9 years ago outlining this? Like, and he kind of smiled, because I remember at that point kind of going, all right, because we tried the Road to Rebellion thing, and then I just couldn't be very disciplined with that one. Of the Road to Rebellion, that red scooter was like Toby Smith, Sam Bark, Jamie Stamp, Curtis Steady, Roy Wills. It was just nuts. Like, after a couple of years of it, became clear we just needed that, because there's only so many fights you can put on Rebellion. If you want to bring status stuff, you get left with everyone else going to fight, unless you want to get divorced and promote 32 shows a year.
Yeah. And so I guess from there, before we get kind of like to kind of before we get into sort of the future, let's just take a second to step back. A couple of weeks ago, the Rebellion's most recent offering, as probably the most international bouts on a single lineup since kind of pre-COVID, would probably be fair to say. Maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like this had the most. There was four Venom Pattaya athletes on the card against some of your local stars, and I guess ties into this idea that we're talking about. Like, you have built a series of guys who really started their careers with you. That's kind of your Carter Lawrences, your Joanne Lars, in addition to showcasing Australian Muay Thai fighters that are stars from elsewhere. That's, your Jordan Godfredson, for example, to where like you can justify creating an event to bring internationals in and kind of really give them that higher level test. So I guess your reflections on the most recent show, how you feel in a couple of weeks? How did the lead up go? Yeah, let's look back on the most recent rebellion.
Yeah, man. Like overall, really happy with that show. From the matchups, but the production, the crowd, the streaming, everything was really, really stoked with it. Like I said earlier, I've got the fanboy things where there's like gyms that I like working with. Like last year, working with PK Sanchai was like a massive, like I enjoyed doing it. And Venom, like Mehdi's funny, like he just complained nonstop about the decisions and everything, but he's a really good, and like I like admire that guy a lot. Like I've looked up to him not only as a fighter, but you know, like what he does isn't just, he's not being a dick. He's just super, super, super passionate, passionate. And what he does for his gym. And then like I spoke to a couple of his fighters, one of the Iranian guys, Iranian obviously, and spoke to him in Persian. And I said, do you just have like a random trainer that trains you? He goes, oh, we've got someone who holds pads, but I'm to you about everything, about strategy and this and that. And I'm like, there's a reason that guy's gym is the way it is. So getting to work with him was like really, really cool. The show, I was super stoked with. Some of the fights were just unbelievable. The atmosphere of the Jordan and the Connor and JP fight.
So good. So
was just
good.
like, you know, it's hard to ever think like getting that atmosphere again. And then, you know, getting Jordan back out after such a long break. Like when I sort of said I wouldn't touch belts again, when I left, I spoke to the WBC and I said, look, there's exceptions. Jordan's the number one guy that I'll always, like, if that opportunity comes up, Joanne, Chad, and whatever else, and getting Jordan back out, like, I don't know if anyone is possibly not be a fan of Jordan Gottfriedson. Good on you if you can find a way. Like, overall, the experience was unbelievable. I was like happy with the crowd, happy with everything that went, but also like feel like that post-COVID thing. Like I feel like it sort of reset back to what we were doing, and then November last year onwards, it's just been a growth thing. And some of the stuff that's going to happen over the next couple of years, I feel like it's going to get Rebellion back on the trajectory it was meant to go. So a few things I'm working on in the background are really super cool. And I'm like actually mega excited for it because I think like not being like kind of fake humble about it, I feel like I've had so many people support me. I owe it to them to take this to that next stage, and I reckon that's coming soon.
A far cry from a promoter I spoke to a couple of years ago who was coming into his last show ever. So one thing that I wanted to get an update on, because it's come up there, so we'll touch on it here, is you mentioned the last time that we spoke, and you touched upon it there, that you had decided as a promoter that you weren't going to do championships anymore. You weren't going to put any belts on the show, and we did an entire episode on it. So if you want some context on it, you can find it in our YouTube history. It's an interesting listen. And the crux of it was titles have been, you know, a little bit of a, you know, they haven't been a help in a lot of cases to the growth of the Australian Muay Thai scene. Fighters get very focused on them, gyms get very focused on them, and we understand there is an alphabet soup of different sanctions that will throw on championships in different shows. For a very long time, there wasn't really a standout, especially within Australia, there wasn't really a standout sanction either. So oftentimes fighters would place a lot of emphasis on fighting for a belt of any kind, regardless of what it is, because that helps them. They felt in some way it looks good on Instagram and things like that. So for yourself as a I would say kind of like a purist promoter, someone who cares about putting on the best matchups, seeing fighters often taking their careers in a direction where they just wanted titles in favor of the best fights was frustrating, and something that you kind of said, look, we're going to put on the, you know, a top end show, and if a lack of championships means you don't want to be involved, then great, we don't want you. Since then, there's been a number of shows. Kind of, I think after the last time we spoke, it was a little while before things got moving again with lockdowns and things. A couple of shows went by. of course, late last year, you put on a couple of WBC World Championship bouts. Chad Collins versus Yacht IQ, Piquet Sanchai, and homegrown star Joanne La fought Barbara Aguiar from Piquet Fight Club. Two proper world title bouts, two top ranked contenders in each weight class. And then coming forward into the most recent show, of course, had a national and a state championship, which has been some time since we've seen domestic level titles on Rebellion. Also, talk about kind of if something changed. Did you kind of feel like things were back in the right direction? Was it a simple matter of your own exceptions? Kind of what's got you back involved with promoting championship bouts? Difficulties, but we're back. I assume we'll be able to glue these together. So the question just asked that Sai was about to
and that's the main event for Rebellion. So I know it's a very exciting announcement.
Okay, so we're getting into taking it back to our last episode. We had a bit of a conversation about why you as a promoter had decided not to carry on with doing championship bouts, which you've recently reintroduced with the WBC. So talk about where you're at with that. What's brought you back to promoting title bouts, and has your stance on this kind of thing in Oz Muay Thai changed?
My stance hasn't changed too much, to be honest. Like, I still think there's a lot of titles happening a lot of times that maybe shouldn't be happening, and like, I still think there has to be a standard. I think the old MTA, WMC rules we had of the last 5 fights and stuff was quite good. And I've tried to sort of try to stick to that even with these. When I quit the WBC as a state rep, when I spoke to Kevin Noon, I did say we chatted on Instagram on our messages and said, look, there'll be a time that I'll come back when the right fight's there. And Chad and Jordan and Joanne were obviously at the top of that list for the world titles. Some of the guys that I had fighting for me regularly, and no one's contracted with me. Everything's like they're bound by love. They got to that point where they were worthy of title. It is something they basically, like I could say, was coming into that awkward conversation part of like, what do we do? We want to fight on Rebellion. We want to win these titles. And what do we do? And like a lot of them were just happy to just keep going through and not doing anything. But it was also kind of hard to say based on my personal stance, deny them of that.
Yeah.
And to be honest, what I did when I was a state rep for WMC and WBC, even though the choices were up to me, I always ran by pool of the lead trainers if they approved it. And then when we had the national titles and stuff, there was a board and a committee for that. Basically, the Chad one we didn't match it for a world title initially. Like, fight Yacht IQ. Yacht IQ's number 4. Nathan Benden's title became vacant, so the title was vacant. The both boys were ranked in the top 10. It's like, Chad's at the peak of his career right now. You can't deny that. And yet IQ was ranked number 4. To say to Chad Collins, you don't deserve that as a title shot, that's not for me to say. There's no way in hell I would have put that as a world title if the fighter was someone I thought Chad was going to walk through. Like, Yacht IQ is probably one of the best guys we've had in Australia over the last, an active fighter.
Oh, no doubt.
Top of his young guy. Joanne La had won the Australian title. And I don't remember the last time she'd lost a fight. And we looked at the rankings, and WBC can verify this. The other 9 girls ranked in Joanne's division at the time, I reckon Joanne would have beat quite easily. We looked through a lot of those girls. I don't want to put a title on if she's just going to walk through it. Joanne, Dom, Superboy, they wouldn't have won that, and I wouldn't have won that. So I asked the WC, who's the toughest girl we can get at around this weight? If Barbara can make that weight, because she'd been fighting a lot heavier. And they said, this is probably the worst fight stylistically, strength-wise, for Joanne. And we saw what the result was. And Barbara had been winning heaps of fights, and she only lost one fight after the title was approved. Fairtex fight, which is 3-round entertainment fight with no clinching for a girl who's basically a clinch monster. So, like, you can't say that wasn't a class level fight, right? So, with those fights. State title fight, I didn't approve it myself. I asked for it to be approved. Connor's basically on an 8-fight winning streak. JP went and lost a 3-rounder in Queensland in between the title getting approved, but he'd been on 4 or 5-fight winning streak. Clearly the best guys in the state. They were matched to fight, and that title was vacant, so we put it. Ewan was going to rematch you. That was something we'd agreed since the fight ended when they fought. You'd had the Australian title. If he was gonna fight you and you still had the title, like, you can't say to the guy who's clearly the best 70 kilo in Victoria, you don't get a title shot. And unfortunately, unfortunately, I think it was a good thing you're having some time off. Your title was vacant. And I asked around for a lot of guys. I was trying to get Lucas Saya out. He was in show, was going to make 70 kilos. I wanted a tough fight for Tim. Like, I know I promote Tim, but the kid's on his 11th fight, and he's fought you, Jordan Fielding. He's fought some really good guys, Matt Mbai. Like, nobody cares if he wins or loses. We're not propping up anyone. And I had Malcolm in Queensland look for some names for me, and he suggested Alfie. I looked at Alfie's fights. A few people thought that was a deliberate mismatch on my behalf. I think we were all proven, if you thought that you were proven wrong. And he was a Queensland champion. I literally asked the WBC, the title was vacant, and they almost instantaneously approved that title. And good on Alfie. He came out, put on a hell of a performance, like I suspected he would.
Alfie surprised some people that night, definitely.
Alfie's a good fighter, and he's young and he's coming through. Like, you know, everyone jokes about the Queensland style thing, man. That guy's got very good style, and like, he comes up in the back and after the fight apologized to me for throwing a spinning back fist, and I'm like, dude. So the titles aren't going to be a frequent feature. Guys that have fought on Roots and Rebellion lots of times, they get matched with an opponent, and criteria meets of what I think should meet. I don't think people should be fighting for titles when they've got significant amount of losses. That's one of the reasons I quit. Do the best I can, but I'm not going to base my show and matchups on title fights. We don't need that to be. One thing that I know, I go back on, and if I do, please bring it up and shame me to death. If you see me putting on ceremonial title belts, you can deal with me separately there, because I still won't really agree with those. But the state title between clearly the best guys on a run or a national title, but if I'm not going to match it based on a title, the fight's got to be matched. It's got to be a good fight, and if the title is the right title for it, we'll do it.
So you're telling me we're not going to see Nike and on Tom championship bouts on Rebellion?
Almost say that 100% confidence that that's never going to happen. And I'm not, there's been fights that I've seen that I've gone, fair enough. There's something there. Sometimes some fighters like legitimately have done, like, I reckon if Luis Regis ever wanted to fight again, and there was a legitimately a legend of a sport that he fought with each other, that belt makes sense to me, but not as a belt where it's like there's nothing else. We're just going to put up this belt.
Not as like a.
And I'm sorry to offend any of my friends or anybody else.
No, it's like it sometimes. I mean, I'm happy to. I don't understand those. I don't know what they. I mean, it's not a criticism of them. I just genuinely don't understand them. I don't know what they mean. And sometimes it feels like
I did a WMC Mad World title between Sam and Tom. And I look back at it and go, that was the sickest fight. One of the best fights we've ever had.
Yeah, crazy.
Not 100% sure what it means. And I like, people just say, do a Rebellion belt. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I I'll do like a Rebellion, like silver belt, which is like a state level one, and then a Rebellion national belt. I'm like, where are they going to defend it? Where are they going to do it? And like, will anyone actually give a shit? And like, nationally, especially the WBC, like what Kevin Moon does and stuff, they've got updated rankings. I respect that. That's fine. Other people's shows, I'm kind of getting to that age where it's like, you guys do you. They ask me. We've got friends who've asked me about title and stuff. I'm fucking brutally honest. If they ask my opinion, I'll say it. I'll be like, I don't agree with it. And there's a few people that we work together that we kind of like, like I think Don and Andrew and Riddler and Pinky and stuff outside of my Thai friends here, like my conscience for Rebellion. Like I do stuff, I go, will Riddler look at me and go, you not doing what you said, you're not who you are. I stop myself from doing stuff like that. I go, would Riddler say to me, Chad and your IQ wasn't a world title fight? I don't reckon. Or do I reckon those guys, like, I respect their opinion enough that if I thought if I was genuinely out of line, I'd feel like I'm not doing the right thing. So when it's right, I'll do it. But yeah, some of those other belts, whatever. If it helps you sell tickets, if it helps you have something on the wall when you retire, good for you. It's not my thing.
Yeah, and that is like, I guess it's another interesting consideration is that from a promotional standpoint, like oftentimes it will help the immediate ticket sales if someone can say to all their mates, look, the winner of this fight will get a belt. But do you feel it helps you more in the long term to actually, because we talked about at the start of the episode, the way that Rebellion has also helped to build a certain level of community. So when you say Connor Goodman is fighting JP, people who don't know either of those guys are like, oh, that fight was for a title. But outside of the title, people say, that's a really cool fight. We've watched both of these guys come up on Rebellion and we'd like to see them fight each other. Do you think there is an element of playing the long game when it comes to stepping away from the title fights?
Dana White described boxing once as like promotions are like fire sales. Like you make one show, whatever it takes to sell as many tickets as you can to that show, match some fights, build the promo up. This, right. It's like, well, that dude had no chance in hell of winning the fight. Yeah. And that's been the boxing model. Whereas I feel like I've had someone said it recently, they go, you must be the most patient in the world. They're like, you're playing the longest game ever. And I'm like, yeah, it feels like that. And sometimes I say, I'm like, maybe I should put a deadline of how many rebellions I'm going to do and stop. And then like, maybe it'll accelerate that long game a little bit. But I'm like, get like as much as I bitch about, as much as I would have said to you and sat in the back room and said it to Nugget and Blair that, I'm getting done with it. End of the day, I did a show. I see all my mates that I like. I'm like, this is fun. I want to do it again.
I'm glad that's your take coming out of it.
I want to do it again, but more painful next time.
Yeah.
More visas.
Yeah, more visas. Yeah. So stepping from that's the most recent Rebellion, that's kind of like where you're sitting from a promotional standpoint. I suppose we'll look now. Let's take a forward look because we've got the comeback of one of my favorite things ever from Rebellion, from watching them over the years. Of course, the Rebellion 8-man tournament is coming back in the 70 kilogram weight division. So the last Rebellion 8-man, was a huge night of fight. I think for me, like in just watching it, I thought that was everything. Like the 8-man is one of my favorite things in combat sports. Like I came up when I was younger watching the K1 World Grand Prix as many did. I think it's one of the most, it's just, I love the stories of it. It's that you've got, especially when you put on one where you've got a bunch of guys that are in, like, choice of weight class is very important because oftentimes you will throw a few people in. There's combinations of guys that have fought each other before, matchups, that people have been talking about. You don't quite know who's going to fight who. So there's already just that element of drama and storytelling, and each fight has the immediate context of what just happened in the last fight. The last fight to me, just the last 8-man, excuse me, had all of that. It was like the, seeing Payax run through, but he had his eye closed and had to come out and fight. And the number of elite ties in that 8-man was just absolutely insane. So talk about why 70 kilos, I guess. First off, why? Because I know there was the last time we spoke, there was a couple of weight divisions you were considering, and they were all pretty good ops, to be honest. Why did you settle on 70? And let's just talk about the upcoming 8-man.
Yeah, I mean, man, I'm I'm exactly the same. Grew up watching K1, loved the tournaments. The reason I went into martial arts was because of Enter the Dragon when I was 11 years old. That was Mr. Han's thing, and my promotion team's called Outliers. I originally wanted to call it Hans Island Promotions. All that, the tournament thing is just unreal. The first one we ever did back in 2013, I think, that the main event was Nadji versus Tom. We had like Daddy Cool as an alternate, Roy Rules. I mean, I remember watching that. It was such a stressful night, and then watching it a month later at my gym on the TV, and I just went, "Holy fuck, that was nuts!" And then we had another 70 kilo 8-man in the middle. The standard was just the national one that Alex Ilioski won. That was sick. We had the 4-man that Reece Saliba and Anthony Foy were in the final. I mean, that was insane, that final. And then the one that you're mentioning, I remember at one stage, very, 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 very rare occasion that Andrew Pine and I agree on something. But there was one stage, like at that show, where we're just like, holy fuck. And it was like 5 ties, who was Channel 7 champion, Episode, who'd been number 2, Samapet, that had won the big tournament they do that I always said are wrong.
Tiger Cement tournament.
Jack 300, Denner Power, who was like, man, his fight with Singh was like fucking nuts. And then we had the 3 best Aussies at the time. That was insanity. And like, some people maybe weren't around the scene as much around then, and they haven't seen those 8-mans. And then you go back and you watch it, it was just like goosebumps. And we did the Roots 8-man, and there was always going to be 8-mans. I'm a sucker for punishment. And last year, the international organization wanted me to do like a road event for them, and they'd asked me to do it. And it was kind of not sitting right with me, because I don't necessarily like how their fights are run. And I was like, I was being really indecisive with it. And at Rebellions, I was like, I had to give him an answer, because there was going to be an announcement. And I went to Steve Hull from Quest, and I said, Steve, I've got to talk to you about this after this show. Like, I don't know. I want to do the right thing for the fighters, but I feel like they can still do that if they want. They don't need the tournament. He's like, 3 fights later, I went by and he said, hey, I've always wanted to do this thing. I've liked your 8-mans. I like the way you do things, but I've always wanted to do this thing with the Quest belt and put a really good prize money on it. And like, literally during the show, we talked about it. And I went and saw him a couple of weeks later. I told the mob. And then it became this thing of, okay, let's fight in the weight division. And there was a couple. So 63.5 obviously made sense. That's traditionally been the strong one.
Yeah.
That would have possibly been the way to go if Chat was available in August. I thought about 76, obviously. There's a few good guys at that weight division. 72.5 was good. That was down to 70 and 72.5. And then Nick Trask is perfect for, man. Like, that's 4 of the guys I would have taken.
Yeah, good on him.
Internationals.
Yeah.
But that's perfect. But 70, Australia, there's a few of you guys that are really strong. And then looking at some of the gyms that I have relationships with in Thailand, I was like, yeah, we can definitely do at least 10 or 11 good 70 kilo guys that can fight for the 8-man.
Yeah, exciting time. So the announcements of kind of the participants in the 8-man starting to roll out on the Rebellion social media. One dropped today this morning. Victor Hugo.
Yeah, from Phuket Fight Club. So there was one of the two boys was going to come out, Karajaba. He's going to be away. He's going to be in Canada. I butcher foreign names. So we were looking at getting him out, but he's going to be away. Victor Hugo's had like 70 fights. He had the WBC middleweight world title.
Yeah.
He fought recently at one Lumpini as well, but he's a very good credentialed dude. So he's going to move down to 70 kilos. So we announced him. And a few days ago, Damon Nelson. You've met Damon before?
I have met Damon, yeah.
You've met Damon. So Damon, can we talk about the show you had to commentate straight after your fight with Damon and the jinx of the head kicks on that show?
You know what?
It was like the most triggering event. Like, I literally happened and I looked over at you. I was like, this has never happened before.
Yeah. And first of all, a commendable effort from me as a commentator. And also, that was tricky. That was honestly a bit difficult. That stressed me out. I mean, honestly, like, I mean, we're taking a sidetrack. But I've watched like a ton of Muay Thai. I love it. It's my favorite thing in the world. I still love being ringside for someone getting knocked out. And that was like, in particular, the first one that night was like a pretty scary KO.
Yeah, and man, KOs are exciting, but I fucking struggle with them. And
Yeah.
my trainers used to say when I was younger, they're like, you're a psychopath until you hurt someone and then you feel really bad about it. And it was like seeing it. It's like people I know. It's not like random strangers for some of the fans, but it was not necessarily funny. But the second it happened, I just thought, fuck, this is the worst place for Hugh to be sitting down watching this.
Well, I don't know if you saw it. I took my headset off for a little while and went for a walk.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I did.
Really fair.
Yeah, I started to freak out a little bit. I'll be back in a sec. Took my headset off for a little bit, did a lap and sat back down.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, we announced Damon Nelson. Say that you're going to be on it, so that'll pop up. That'll be the next post, so that'll pop up. So let's not hide a secret too much.
Let's not pretend.
Let's not pretend. Let's not pretend I don't need a reason to torment ARM in Melbourne soon. But yeah, man, it's going to be sick. It's going to be a really good one. And the support I've got from not only Quest, but all the other sponsors, we want to make this definitely an annual thing. The weight division will shift. The prize money will continue to go up from obviously the main course prize coming from Quest this year. And
that's a Quest.
You know, everyone on the show is going to get paid. So $25,000 for the winner, and then runner-up and semi-finalists and quarterfinalists, they all get incrementally more money, which is great. But yeah, man, I'm like, they're like the rest of running rebellions become fairly non-stressful. I've done it enough, but 8-mans are just so tricky because like you lose one fighter, the whole night's in jeopardy. It's not just one bout, but it's challenging and it'll be fun.
And I guess so it's massive. Like I don't know if we even really outline it. So the grand prize is $25,000, thanks to the major sponsor Quest Infrastructure Group.
Infrastructure, yep.
Yeah. And Steve is an absolute legend. Every time, like I had dinner with him earlier in the year, and he just loves Thai boxing and really gets behind the individual fighters and wants to support it. And to get involved in this way, to put on something like this, it's amazing. And I feel the fights that are going to come out of it, it's prize money like this for a Thai boxing event, especially within Australia. It didn't exist. Well, it doesn't exist. It exists now, so the opportunity for it's not an easy night's work, but the opportunity for the winner is absolutely massive. And I think off of that, the fights that are going to come out of this are going to be absolutely incredible. Because
100%, man.
I think we're lucky in Australia to have some of the fights that you see within Australia, just the style matchups. just for people that are putting it on out of the love of Thai boxing. You know, we've seen some ridiculous fights on Australian shores, and it's not like these guys are going hammer and tong for millions of dollars. Like, they're doing it because they love Muay Thai and they want to put on great fights. And they're the people that I've always admired in Thai boxing, is people that, you know, I love a fighter with heart that comes out. We've seen some crazy fights like this on Rebellion between the likes of some of the names that we've mentioned, but throw that kind of prize money in front of these guys, and it's incredible what we're going to see on the night in an 8-man.
Yeah, 100%, man. And, you know, like, guys, that's like Steve's a very understated guy. And, man, the sort of things he does. And at the last show, I pulled him in the ring, which was hilarious because I don't like talking on the mic at my shows. I've probably done it 4 times in 12 years. But he definitely wasn't there to talk, but I asked him to. But he's, you know, like, he sends his guys from work in the ring to present stuff. He's not out there just like flashing his name. And man, 2 weeks before my show and that announcement, we had the Quest 20-year anniversary gala event in Geelong that we attended, and like, what he's built and the people around him that have built it's such a ridiculously good company. And, you know, you follow on with that, you got John and Claudine from JPS who've always supported Rebellion. Like,
legends.
You meet very hard to meet nicer people. Yeah. Trevor from Kitty Formwork. And people always sort of made these like random calls that Connor was winning fights because he worked for Kitty. No, he just needed someone to beat him, which they did. Fairtex, like Chano from the Fairtex factory, I get to go see him this week. Man, like, they only sponsor Rebellion, Fairtex Thailand, and then we asked them to get behind Muay Thai Victoria. They jumped on board. Ladbrokes only sponsor Rebellion now. BPS, Daniel Stroud used to fight on Rebellion and Roots. Yeah. Now, like, they're just good people behind it. Like, and they all do it because they love Muay Thai. No one's getting a new plasterer because of Rebellion. Daniel's doing it because he loves Muay Thai. So it's just like good people coming together for like really good fights, and now being able to give one fighter $25,000 at the end of the day, it's sick. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is. You know, and pretty incredible as well that you've got, not only you're presenting an opportunity to, you know, potentially one of your your Rebellion regulars, but also you're putting on something that people from other parts of the world will be, because it was already the case when the prize money's not been this high before. I think 10 grand the last one. And
so the old pool used to be 21,000 with 10K for the winner, but 21,000 overall.
And even then, it was like there were people, big name fighters from other parts of the world, putting their hands up saying, bring me in, I want to crack at it. So you know, it really does turn. We talked a lot about building people from a local level, but here now you become a marquee, like something that people that are based in Thailand, you know, for our sport, that's an amount of money that anyone in the world would be saying, yeah, let me come down there and have a crack.
Yeah. And I think, like, I mentioned it to you before we started recording. Like, I think the timing of it in August is like around the semifinals of the Raja World Series.
Yeah.
And I reckon a few of you guys in it should be pretty thankful that's happening, because there was like 2 or 3 other names that would have come down for it. And that's like my dream, like my absolute, like one of them's my absolute favorite fighter of the last 5 years.
Yes.
Like, that's the kind of things people want to do. And like, if we can get it to the point where we can get the 4 best Australians and then bring like 4 best internationals, and, you know, once you put that in the mix and some of those guys knock each other up, you might get a final where it's like you're Hugh O'Donnell in the final against a fighter that is probably like idolized.
Yeah.
And that's like where the magic happens. And that's when you do get an upset, and it's like, man, that's when magic happens.
Yeah. And sort of like, you know, that's where you get incredible opportunities created for Australian fighters. Like, of course, not within a tournament, but I will never forget the night Tyler Hardcastle fought Summerpet. You know, like he was really spoken about, Tyler, like he was a lamb being led to slaughter that night. I remember what people were saying in the lead up to that fight. And like, I think you told us the story that like Tyler wasn't even the first pick. It was getting Lloyd. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the story that I remember. And like, what a performance
Man,
I had that night.
if you watch that fight, there's so much of that fight where my head is in my hands because, like, I knew Tyler stylistically and intelligence wise beat Summerpet because, like, I think Summerpet will repeatedly do the same thing, and eventually he's either going to left kick you to death or left straight you to death. But I knew, like, the combination of Tyler and Riddler, they'd figure it out. But I literally had my head in my hands, and I'd look up, and it's like, okay, I'm like. Insane. And then he did it, and then that opened up so many other things for him. But yeah, that night was insanity. Absolute insanity.
Crazy. And I guess as well, it's an interesting thing because you talk a lot about that idea of when you're putting on an 8-man, you've got that freedom to figure out who the best guys in Australia are, and then potentially call in, make half the bracket, for example, international or guys from. How do you feel as a promoter the Australian scene now stacks up against the best fighters from other parts in the world? Because even outside of tournaments, we mentioned Chad and Hugh, Joanne and Barbara. Do you feel, I mean, I guess if you didn't believe the Australians had a chance, you wouldn't be matching the fights. But over the course of your promotional career, do you feel the Australian level has risen against the internationals? Or like, how do you feel we stack up?
I said this to Matt Lucas on his recent trip. I said I feel like we're still getting a little bit underestimated when people come over for the first time. I think the first couple of times, like Fairtex and fighters to my show, they Yada Rio's going to just come and murder people, and then like Lloyd Dean comes back and smashes him, and like even Mehdi when he was leaving on Sunday morning, he goes, "Okay, bye bye, I'm taking Team Loser." I was like, "No, man," like. And I was like, I think the next time they come, there's going to be some bad motherfuckers, like the next tier upcoming.
Yeah.
We are rebuilding the top end. They're still not, like you think back a few years ago at the 63.5 kilos, how many at that level, whereas we've got like real peaks.
Yeah.
The local shows, the root shows, the amateur shows, that's going to fill up the top end more. And once we get that level fighting each other heaps more, then it's going to be absolutely nuts. And I think that's when I get a little bit funny about titles and stuff. I'm like, don't worry about giving people titles for a while. Let's just make really, really sick fights and get that top end built, because we've had a bit of a plateau around COVID.
Yeah,
it is getting to that level where it's like, man, we've got legitimately. Look at little Kim. Like, she's the best fighter in the world, best female fighter in the world. Say whatever you want. She was a legend, right? You can't. That's the high level fight. George, man, Jake Lund. So many people might not like the dude. What he's doing. Tyson Harrison's coming into his own right now. Chad Collins is peak Chad Collins. Jordan Godfredson, like that dude is right up. So we're getting that depth. We're getting that a few, but we just need to be a bit deeper pool, and we'll get there. Give it 2 or 3 years. Like Melbourne, Muay Thai, and Sydney. Like I think shithead up north, and what we're doing here, like it's all coming together.
We had it's something we've discussed a little bit on the show, that it's like what people that are looking at it from a surface level often don't understand is, regardless of how high level the top guys are, what's really important is kind of the engine that's creating the next guys coming up, and it felt like post kind of those couple of years of COVID, we still, of course, had elite fighters coming out of that couple of years of fights. But what we didn't have was a couple of years of the next guys developing. And I actually think immediately post-COVID, fights were great. Like there was stacked card after stacked card. You had all the guys that itching to get in there and fight. And also the fact that everyone was kind of still stuck domestic meant there's a little bit less messing around to get top guys to fight each other.
Yep.
It just became the only option. So immediately it was like, cool, Australian Muay Thai is great. But then some time went on and you realize, oh, actually no one else has been coming through this whole time. All the guys you remember from before are the only guys now.
Yeah, the pipeline shut off, and that was it. We weren't just getting that through. And then I think about the last Root show, like the Roots thing was meant to be getting lots of like first timers coming through, and even like the last Roots guy, it was like 2 or 3 first timers. It was a bunch of guys with 4 or 5 fights on them.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now we're starting to get that backing up a little bit more, and there's like there's probably heaps more guys ready to step in, and you get, you know, like that's what we need, is that consistent push through from the other side. So when you get the top tier guys retiring, and hopefully they don't stick around for too long.
Yeah.
Once they've had their careers, they're healthy, they've had what the life experience they want out of Muay Thai, and they drop off, there's other guys ready to push up. Not shit, what happened to the top tier guys? You know, Roy Wills retired and Lloyd Dean retired and this guy retired, and now we've got what happened? You know, but it's starting to coming through, man. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I think it's, and for me, like in looking, because I'm involved a little bit with kind of Muay Thai New South Wales just from an officiating kind of standpoint. And there was a period of time where it was like we were waiting for that COVID period to be over, and then it was over, and then kind of a whole year or a year and a half went by, and you're like, things still kind of don't feel like they're, you know, in particular, the problem that we've had in New South Wales is like we're desperate for female Thai boxers. They're like, and I think it's been a little bit of a problem for yourself too, trying to get some more experienced females. Much it felt like that kind of pre-COVID, it really felt like the participation was really starting to move along. And I started to worry. I was like, what is, you know, we're a long time removed from lockdown now. Like, is it just never coming back? But now I feel just, I guess it is a slow burn. It feels like the number of participants is back. And you know, was having lunch with a few people in New South Wales Muay Thai today, and a little committee are organising a female sparring day, which in 2 days got like 32 registrations, which is like super cool. I was really happy to hear that that's a success. But yeah, like I think we're now at a time when, you know, things are moving the way that they need to move to build the next generation, and that ties to the idea of playing the long game that we talked about. So I guess to switch gears to another conversation topic off of that, you have Rebellion as a marquee international level show. You started to build your own, I guess, development league in Roots. Like, so for those who are unfamiliar, which I'm sure is none of you if you're listening to this, Roots will be the kind of undercard to a Rebellion lineup, and is typically the less, it's all professional, but the less experienced professional, early in career professionals. And it is also a platform for people to get their few fights done and kind of let the crowd get to know them. And you've got that kind of symbolic earning the Rebellion shorts, which I think is super cool. So fighters all want to be involved in Rebellion. So after a few strong showings on Roots, they build a little bit of a name and they're invited to the main card, like a progression league. We touched on that, but since we last spoke, I think the biggest development has been you're also heading up the Muay Thai Victoria events. So talk about that format and what sort of the vision behind that organization is.
Yeah, so Muay Thai Victoria is run by Dominic Leone from Eight Blades, Jason Castro from Moracat, Spring Sia. We just brought on Bridget, who does the female fight companion, and myself. We all have different roles. I'm just I guess the president side of the most talking, and people always say, but it's like, it's not my event. It's just we run it as a committee. We run it truly as a non-for-profit. So none of our committee have ever taken a cent out of that organization. We completely volunteer. The officials and the such, they get paid, but it's a monthly amateur Muay Thai day. Our goal is to promote amateur Muay Thai, run it professionally, but not like a pro show. So the kind of venues and the lights and stuff we've used, we've just made sure that it's about the fight. And, you know, we made a decision because we run as a nonprofit, we have funds in the bank to run an event no matter what. So we've made sure every month, barring, I think, January, we've run a show every month for the last year and a half post lockdown. It took a couple of years to get approved by the Minister of Sport here. And once we've done it, we've just rolled through with it. And to be honest, it's like one of those things that I feel like since we last spoke, really sparked the fire for me again. The quality of fights were really, really good. We've got kids, we've got like really little kids that are basically, it's almost like Taekwondo with low kicks that padded up like the Michelin man, and they can't hit each other in the face, 1 minute rounds. And then, you know, there's the 11 to 12, 13 to 14, 12 to 13, 14 to 15, and 16, 17-year-old categories, and then 18 and above. It's similar to IFMA, that level of padding, elbow pads, headgear, 10 or 12 ounce gloves, soft shin guards, 2 minute rounds, full tie. And it's been terrific. Like, really good support we're getting from the gyms, running it consistently. And we're starting to get guys who've had 6 or 7 fights, and then you're starting to see them on Roots and other shows. And it's been really cool, man. And we've got officials coming through. So Samsarat, she's come through. We've got a few other training to come through who'll start to officiate on the pro circuit. We've got some big things happening with some coaching, with some officiating programs that we're bringing in. And because we have the funds, we just want to put it into the sport to just constantly grow it. And yeah, the guys on the committee, they're just working really hard, and it's pretty cool. You can come to it live. It's like $30 on the door. Under 15, it's $15. Under 8 or something's free. Like, we've made it super affordable for families to come and watch fights. It's brilliant, man. Really enjoying it.
And I feel I've noticed now, even when, because, you know, I commentated a couple of Roots recently, and as you say, it's becoming less and less common that you get even a debutant on Roots. Like, most of the time, I feel like I remember the names of the people that are fighting in most of the fights. Like, Roots has its own little stable, the same way that Rebellion does. But when I watch 2 first timers, and I can tell when they've come through the Muay Victoria. Well, I guess for the most part they all have now, but like, you can tell, like, when 2 guys are fighting for the first time, they don't look like they're having their first fight, which is what a debut professional fight should be. Like, you compare it to boxing, professional debut fighters are not people that are doing it for the first time. They're actually very seasoned and experienced. Thai boxing, especially in Australia, didn't really have that a lot. Some people did go pro to have their first competitive experience for a long time, but you're watching, like, amazing to me how clean the style is for people with 0-0 pro records. Like, how quickly they take to the professional format from having that padded experience. I guess when you're at, I don't know how much you actually get to see from in between running around at these events, but like, are you now watching guys fight on the Muay Thai Victoria days being like, I'd love to see that guy on Rebellion on Roots in a little while? Is that kind of like how it plays out in your head?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I don't want it to be like my own personal needs, but I see people, and like, when the trainer messages me and goes, "Hey, can you get them on Roots?" I've seen them, and I know what to expect.
Yeah.
So, on the last show that you were, on the last Roots, like, Chloe, Corey's partner, fought Helen. It was Helen's second pro fight.
That was a really good fight.
That was Helen's second pro fight. She'd had 3 or 4 amateurs at Muay Thai Victoria. Chloe had one in South Australia on one of the South Australian Muay Thai leagues, but she'd had 3 here. And then I'm not getting complete unknowns, which has always been the hard thing matching. And you watch them and you're like, really? Some pros fighting like that? And you go, okay, that's the model itself. And yeah, like, there's guys now seeing it, it's become so much easier because I'm there and
Yeah.
I sit next to the score recorder and timekeeper, and I'm like de facto MC as well. So I see all the fights. I ref a bunch of fights. Sometimes I judge, and I see it, and I'm like, okay. And if someone says to me, "Hey, I want to chuck this person in the pros," I'll literally be like, I don't. You can. I probably won't put them on,
Yeah.
but fights to go. But there's like 3 or 4 guys that are going to fight in the next routes that have had a few fights on the amateurs. When you watch them fight, unless all of a sudden they start having a nervous breakdown, you're just
Which
going to,
happens.
your mind, your mind's going to get blown, especially because we don't do it with the big, thick shin guards and 16-ounce
Yeah.
gloves. So
Yeah.
from the beginning, they learn to kick properly. And like, man, I remember reffing one fight, like in the middle, I'm like, all right, you're not being a fanboy here. Just relax. Because I was just like, this is so sick. This is so sick. And it's like, man, you just start seeing. And I think, like people sometimes fight on routes, seen them fight on other shows. And also when they fight on routes, they just fight better. It's like that expectation that they have to show style. And same with
Yeah.
Muay Thai Victoria.
Yeah.
It's like, if you come out and do like a double jumping crescent kick, everyone's just going to go, oh. So like everyone kind of, it gets ingrained in them. And we were talking about it fight recently where I said you can almost stick to a bad style for too long
Yeah.
and no
Yeah.
amount of correction is going to get you out of it. I think people are getting into that style early where it's not like Haymaker City. It just sets them on the right career. And like, look at the gyms now in Victoria.
Yeah.
It's like, man, there's so many good gyms. Like they actually know what they're doing.
Mm.
And yeah, it's good. I get to see guys now, like the dream job is like see them come in. I always used to joke when I was a bouncer that I'd see 18-year-olds just turned 18 come in and 6 years later see them complete drug fuck losers and leave. I get to see the opposite of it now. People coming into Muay Thai nervous for their first fight and then go, Jack Matthews and Daniel Matthews were on. They
Mm.
fought on Muay Thai Victoria. They fought on Roots. They're on Rebellion. Like it's really cool. Like giving Dan Matthews his Rebellion shorts at the last show, and I was sitting there watching it, going, "Oh, is it too soon?" And then giving it to him, and then seeing and he holds up the shorts, and all his mates go nuts. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Cool.
"This is like beautiful." Like,
Yeah, it's like people are watching Rebellion and setting it as a goal. Like people come into our gym and they're like, I want to fight on Rebellion one day. Cool. Or you like people. I remember, like
just take money, Hugh. Say, I know the promoter really well. Slip me a couple of $100 and I'll put in a good word for you.
well, like I could say that, but they would probably say back, I know the promoter doesn't like you, and I really nothing I could argue.
They've seen me on the anti-redhead forums all along.
You run into Aram there. But I recall like the first time I went to Thailand, I had not fought on Rebellion yet, but I had recently had my first fight on Roots. And I probably told you this story before, but I'll retell it for the new listeners. I was wearing my Roots shorts at training, and Crew F, Peto Sijalpo, one of those incredible twins to watch that everyone's seen on Instagram, he wet pointed the shorts and he said, "Oh, you fought on Roots." I said, yeah, I had. And like that to him was like, oh, okay, so you're on one of the better shows in Australia. You knew Roots, you knew Rebellion. He asked me about one of Toby's fights. He said, oh, I watched Toby fight. Like you can go. It's crazy to have a show in Australia that you go overseas and you've got the shorts and people are like, people do, even before I had fought on Rebellion, people would ask about it. Like people from the States or from Europe would say, oh, Australia, like, have you been down to foreign? It's like their gauge of Muay Thai quality in Australia.
That's
like,
amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but it's also like, it's fair also. Like that is where the top fights, I think it's cool for me of course I fight on Rebellion pretty regularly, but also as a fan of Rebellion. Like, I think it's cool to see Rebellion. It's part of like an ecosystem of like, because as Thai boxing fans, we don't have the closest knowledge of other parts of the world, but we know where their top shows are. And it creates that level of interest when if someone comes here to fight and they've regularly fought on Muay Thai Grand Prix in the UK, you can probably be like, okay, that's probably one of their top guys. It creates this. It's hard in Muay Thai because it can be quite a distributed. It doesn't have the uniformity that, in particular MMA does. But the more that we can bolster up a major player, it becomes a very interesting part of that global Muay Thai landscape. And I don't know how you feel about it, but I kind of do start to feel like there's a little bit more. These bridges are being built, and promotional reputation is a big part. It's impossible for anyone. You're someone who's trying to keep an eye internationally on who's worth bringing in, and promotional name value will matter. You can't watch every single fight, but knowing that's a promotion that I trust is producing the top quality fights, I can trust that this person's going to come in here and be of a certain level.
Yeah, 100%. It's like Andy Housen and Liam have Hitman Fight League. It's like, they're not going to put shitty fighters on that, right? And it's a different code, but like if you were in a King in the Ring 8-man in New Zealand and someone calls you from overseas and say, hey, I need a decent K1 fighter, like you'd go to King in the Ring, right? Yeah. And it's just that helps it a lot. I think now I look at the stuff that, I think like Nick Trask is doing, Greeny's doing with, despite of Aram's involvement, the Muay Thai League guy, Grand Prix guys, Muay Thai League, where everyone's trying to like the standard and do more uniquely cool things. So, and we talked about the Australian scene is like people are starting to understand like, I've always thought Australia outside of Thailand is one of the top 3 power countries. Like I think France, UK, and Australia produce the best non-Thai Muay Thai fighters. And to have a brand here that people recognize internationally, you get messages from international fighters. It's really humbling. Like I have a chat and it's like, a guy that I really enjoy watching fight. I'm chatting to him recently. He goes, I said, oh, you're 70 if you want to come, because he was liking all the stuff. And I'm like, you want to come and fight on it? He goes, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't even consider bringing me out. I'm like, the fuck do you say? Of course I would. I'm like, it's just cool. It's really good. It's, promoting isn't always the most financially rewarding thing in the world, but the satisfaction and the ego boost you get out of it's, top notch.
Yeah. Actually, even to your earlier point, I sometimes get messages from people international asking how they can get on Rebellion. And I just have to say, you massively overestimate my influence. I just don't know how I can help you.
And since we last spoke, unfortunately, the other Rebellion met its fate. So there's only one back to being one Rebellion again.
I mean, it was hotly contested for a minute there, but I knew you could come out on top.
I did. Nothing as always, and it worked out well in the end.
So we've covered a bit of what's going on now. Massive 8-man. Now 3 fighter announcements as of this show. So that's starting to take shape, more to come. Muay Thai Victoria tomorrow and continuing to build the next.
And those 570 kilo guys they want to get in touch with, please hit me up or hit you up. Just need 5 more guys. If anyone can think of anyone, let me know.
Yeah, we're really just clutching at straws, hoping people come to side, because the announcements are just coming as soon as people are lined up.
Connor Goodman's going to put on 10 kilos, bring the Irish crowd.
Yeah, be me and Connor Goodman and an all Irish opening bout at 70 kilos. But looking again,
and you better knock him out because you can't win.
Anyway, looking again to the future. I mean, you've got plenty going on, but I'm hearing some rumors about what else is in the pipeline for Rebellion. One more show beyond the August 8-man lineup for 2023. What else is in the pipeline? What are you looking to get done?
I think November at the moment we probably have the biggest super fight left in Australian soil confirmed for that, barring the two of them falling over and hurting themselves, which is always a possibility. So that'll be November 25. That's the big one.
Let's see if anyone's smart enough to guess. It's a tricky one.
That's right. Aram and Andrew are going to have a foxy boxing sumo suit now. Kieran and the Cookie Joe on the top shelf. It's going to be the biggest battle yet. Shit. Yeah. So that's been booked for a while and confirmed to go ahead in November. So hopefully both boys stay healthy and on track. That's a fight that needs to happen. I'm really happy to be doing it here. And then next year, then this weekend away and this next week in Thailand will hopefully help shape a couple of more things and a few other things that all seem to be happening at the same time. Yeah, we're talking about doing the Muay Thai hour again, but we won't mention that. Andrew and I just need a third person. That's about it, man. Like I think the fear of the lockdowns is kind of out of our system now, so we can start acting a bit more confidently and go forward.
Cool. And of course, given this show and my own interest, we talk about Rebellion, we talk about Muay Thai, but what about kind of your other promotional entities? Are we going to see any plans to bring Boa back? Maybe we have some jiu-jitsu fans listening. Does that get put on hold with Rebellion moving the way that it is, or?
Yeah, like the plan was to do a big bow at the end of this year, and there's a couple of people involved that, like, I literally had 4 missed calls from one of them this week going, "Hey, how about that boa thing?" There's stuff that's just popped up with Rebellion's a bit more compelling at the moment. Boa's like my own jiu-jitsu career. I'm like the forever white belt. It's always there. I'll always go back to it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll find a way that it can be a little bit more independent of me and I still have some involvement. Like I like boa, I like grappling, I like all fight sports. So that'll always appear. There's a possibility, thanks to my my boxing coach, Bobo, my Uzbek boxing coach at my gym, that we're gonna end up doing something with boxing. Definitely something with amateur boxing next year, and potentially a pro event. But yeah, it just depends. If some of the stuff that's happening with Rebellion really starts to kick in, and I've got to spend a bit more time gym stuff, my own gym and like family things. I think it's like too much the size circus sometimes. So if I can balance things reasonably, yes, but otherwise just focus more on Rebellion. Like Rebellion's like just like sits in my heart. So
I'm glad it does. And on that, I guess, we talk a lot about your promotions, but of course you run William Street Gym full time. Also, I don't think the last time we spoke, Bobo wouldn't have even started. So how are things with the gym? What how's everything at William Street?
Good. It's gone through a big shakeup. I was essentially doing 95% of the classes, and I really struggled to step back from it. Like I was there for everything all the time. When we had a full MMA gym, I used to go to every Muay Thai fight. We had every grappling event, every jiu-jitsu, every wrestling, every MMA thing. Like I was so hands-on. And now especially since Bob has arrived, and just previously to that, we had Steve, a Scottish boxing coach who was with us for a period. I started to feel a bit more confident in stepping back. And now I'm kind of only teaching 4 or 5 classes a week, which is about the right amount people should be exposed to me. Bob was doing a lot more, Seal's doing more, and hopefully now I'm trying to like learn to actually run it as a business. It's a kind of run based on my personality in the past, which is a fucking shocking bit. But doing more stuff that's like try to get the business running independently of me, because whenever Rebellion's run, the gym is suffered because people have to just walk on eggshells, not to upset me, but they're paying customers. You can't really sustain that too long.
You can't expect that amount of like emotional goodwill from someone who's paying you to be there.
ridiculously have, and it's somehow where the people literally say this gym is Stockholm syndrome. Like it's the most abusive relationship in the world, and they're like, "Oh, thank you for letting us train here." So yeah, it's been good. I'm getting a lot of help from Frankie Diesel the last few months.
Oh, nice.
He's just been why he's doing it. He's just a good dude. Every week, just catching up with me and running through some stuff, and that's been good. Learning,
He's
realizing
coming
how
on the
little I
show
know about
soon,
business.
actually.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah. Tell some secrets about the fight gym business.
Frankie's a really, really good dude, man. Like, I'm not into the whole sports business coach type thing because some of them are just like doesn't work with the combat sports model we
Yeah.
have where we've got a real relationship with our people. But Frankie understands that having been a fighter and a trainer, he knows we don't just want 1,000 people that we don't ever talk to. So it's been pretty magical with Frankie. It's been really good.
Yeah, cool. I'm really looking forward to speaking to him.
Yeah.
And before we finish up, a couple of questions. I mean, one that's just kind of come to mind. You talk about sort of your running of the gym and kind of establishing that level of scale where you can step back as you say, run it like a business. You step back the amount of actual classes you run and outsource a little bit of that kind of thing. As Rebellion grows and scales, do you see yourself having to put steps in place so that does Rebellion reach a point where, just in terms of hours of the day, you're not able to do all of the work that you do and you have to kind of like hand some of that off? Is that something you'd prefer not to happen? Like, would you not want it to grow beyond that point? Is it something that you think about as kind of, I guess, the shows become more labor intensive?
Look, at the moment, believe it or not, that we've done things so much that essentially my regular hours that I put into it's not that much. It's more how much it occupies my mind.
Yeah.
And then the core group of guys that help me, like Fudsley on graphic design and Tom on videos and Will on graphic and stuff. And then you got the main boys like Benny, who's been there forever, and Peter Sherwood and Tim, who's doesn't have an appetite anymore for some reason, and Ryan and those guys who are like there. We've got the handle of what it is now, but part of what is happening now, I'm just trying to bring a couple of other people that are going to bring in things that I don't necessarily enjoy doing and have avoided doing in the past. And I think that's hopefully going to open up a few more doors and just take the next 2-3 steps that needs to happen. It's not as much time intensive. It's more knowledge, and end of the day, I do the stuff that I enjoy like everybody else. So just getting people who are like, that's what they're good at, let them do that, and let's make this even bigger and better.
Awesome. Okay, 2 more questions to finish with you, just to get you thinking. At this point, like, Rebellion has grown. We've talked so much about, what the initial vision was and even where that name comes from, Rebellion, and to operate a full Muay Thai promotion in a state that was predominantly kickboxing, to a serious player in global Muay Thai. It's known around the world. If you could go back and give Rebellion one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think, to be honest, I stressed out a bit too much early, and people think I'm a stress head now. I don't really think I'm a stress head. I just raced to the intensity. But I think the first few shows, I kind of thought if one fight fell apart, everything would fall apart, and it almost never does. That's probably the core thing as far as my own long-term health. But I think the other side was just the couple of things that I'm adding onto the show now. I would have probably gone back and gone, hey, from years of doing other things, you don't like dealing with this topic and you don't like dealing with that topic. Get a couple of people on your team. I've always like the gym. I'm like, this is me. I do this thing. It's just a bullshit kind of ego thing, like building it around yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If I could convince 32-year-old Sai that was the right thing, 32-year-old Sai would probably have like punched me in the face and gone, fuck off. But if I could, that's what I would have done. Is like build a little the team you've got, get them more involved, because some of the guys still to this day, I involve them very little. That's what I probably would do.
Awesome. And just in closing, I suppose, I guess you've decided you were retiring multiple times, but eventually there will come a day where you're not promoting shows anymore. So coming at it from purely like the Rebellion promotional standpoint, if you could have, Rebellion's already built a legacy as an incredible promotion. If when a time comes, or even at any given time, looking back on Rebellion, if there was, you mentioned Rebellion, I suppose, what's the key thing you want Rebellion to be remembered for, to be spoken about? What's one thing that the key thing that you want to leave behind for Thai boxing with Rebellion?
Look, obviously, I want to be more popular, more trained, more displayed. I say beautiful Muay Thai. I understand it's violent, and to win a Muay Thai fight, you have to bring the fight. But what separates Muay Thai is the skill set, and I will always call it beautiful Muay Thai. Doesn't matter if someone's getting iced. So, people being appreciative of Muay Thai is ultimately my main thing. And like, if you come to a show and you have this amazing experience where you sit there, it's your first time watching Muay Thai, and you see this incredible fight and that atmosphere like we had at the last show.
Yep.
That's what I want to remember. But it's like the individual memories. Like when Barbara won a WBC world title, like my friend Joanne loses it, but then I look down and Barbara looks at the belt and starts crying. Like, I'm like, if she remembers that moment, incredible. And, the violin play was only for Connor, but then I was like, it's not fair on Gianpaolo not to have a walkout, and we get that guitarist and he comes out, and those boys aren't ever going to forget that. It's like those individual memories. That's really like, if people walk away from it and be inspired by it, like that's the best thing. Like personally, everybody go, I love beautiful technical 5-round Muay Thai. I love seeing clinching. If that's a legacy I live, and people come through, and from day one, amateurs to whatever pro shows are after me, that's great. But it's the individual experiences. Like, your fight with Tim, I reckon that's a fight you're always going to remember, right? That's an experience that you will remember, and it's going to be part of you. And if I got to contribute to that and I got to enjoy it, so it was a fair trade-off, fucking perfect, man. Like that's the beauty of it. And that's important to me.
I had to forget it, changed my face forever. So
idiots. The two of you.
Idiots. Okay. That's probably a pretty good place to leave it. So I always appreciate talking to you. I'm sure this is not the last time that we'll have you on the show. I've been watching Rebellion since I was in high school. We talk about fighters aiming to be on Rebellion. Fighting on Rebellion was a dream of mine, to especially, moments like you mentioned the fight with Tim. I was also a part of your 10-year anniversary, and just kind of being a part of
mental fight.
Yeah, Rebellion events, and just to feel like this is such an incredible, a cornerstone of Australian Muay Thai, and the opportunity to fight on Rebellion is, for me, the opportunity to be a very small part of this this legacy that you've created. So appreciate everything you do for Australian Muay Thai. We're very lucky to have you. Glad you didn't call it quits the last time that you told me you were going to, and very much looking forward to coming down in August to win the 8-man. Any parting message for the listeners? Anyone that you want to give a shout out to before we call it quits?
No, thank you, Hugh. What you do is very important. Like, you build part of the culture of the sport. Thanks to everyone who supports Rebellion. Whether you like my shit on Instagram, buy tickets, buy the streams, it's good, man. Like, it keeps us going. And when I come on the next time to once again announce another retirement, or that I'm never touching belts again, then we'll have a separate conversation. But no, thank you to everyone, and all the guys who are out there supporting the show in their own way. You know who you are, and I appreciate you.
And did I see there's there's a new merch drop on the way? Have we got?
Oh yes.
Yep.
Yeah, there's literally boxes sitting in my office, and all I've got to do is put them online. But I think I'll put them online when I come back. I have a thing. It's called Money's Lava. So they will be online soon and available at rebellionmuaythai.com.au.
So keep an eye out for those. Get yourself some beautiful shirts and hoodies. That's the
t-shirts and hoodies. So the Roots One Love Muay Thai ones, which you can't see on the video, and the Rebellion 100% Muay Thai since 2011 ones. And also all the fights that haven't gone up on YouTube since November are being released now. So they're all sitting at the back end and they're just coming up one fight at a time. So jump on our YouTube channel. And we're on TikTok now. I'm not, but Rebellion is.
Rebellion and Matt Lucas are on TikTok. So we'll put all the links to the Rebellion YouTube channel and the socials in the description here. You might even see me on the Rebellion YouTube channel if you look hard enough. Get yourself some merchandise at rebellionmuaythai.com.au and tune in for the next show in August 12th?
August 12th.
For August 12th, tune in. See myself in the 8-man. Between now and then, Monday, which is probably drop day for this episode, I will be teaching a session at Warriors of the Mongkon Gym. I've been talking to Owen about doing it forever, so really excited to see some people there. Looking forward to talking you through how that goes. And next week, if you happen to be in Torquay, Victoria, I am going for a visit to my friends at Bones MMA. So hopefully we'll get a podcast done with another repeat guest, Matty Williams, while I'm down there. So stay tuned for that. And with that, we'll leave you to it. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. Does help us a lot. The more you subscribe, the more people we can get this podcast to, and the easier it is for us to continue doing it. So with that, until next week, see ya.